Welcome to Autism ADHD TV. It is the place to be for parents and professionals. I'm your host, Holly Blanc Moses, the mom psychologist who gets it. We dive into all kinds of important information like behavior, social skills, and learning. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Kenzie Clark. I am thrilled that you're joining us today.
Thank you so much, Holly. I'm so happy to be here today. I really appreciate just the time to be here and to spend with you speaking.
Wonderful. And I know we're going to talk about all kinds of important things today. But before we get started, I want to introduce you. So, Kenzie, you are the founder and manager of Able Transition Consulting. As a former special education teacher, you saw the need for this lifelong transition service and sought out a master's degree in secondary special education and transition for the University of Kansas. The transition process and preparing all families and individuals for high quality lives is your passion. That's so great. So your master's degree provided you with the expertise and knowledge regarding all things transition. And so as a parent and as a professional, I see families really thinking about, okay, what do we do right in this moment? Because there's lots of overwhelm. How can I get through this next 5 minutes? And honestly, Kenzie, sometimes I live in 5-minute increments.
Yes. and that's okay.
As a parent of two differently wired boys, that's sort of the way I have to do it sometimes, and the way I have to do it a lot of times, honestly. Yeah. But there are a lot of things out there, and transitions are hard, and they get bigger and older, and their needs change. And This is just such an important thing here, because there's this gap, right? There are these resources out there. There are these things that we know we need to do in order to support our children, but there's not this service that helps us figure it out. And a lot of times it's almost like you're out in the middle of the ocean swimming by yourself. So that's why I'm so excited about what you do and how you help families through this. And I know, again, the clinicians listening, the educators are listening. You have a lot of questions for the children that you support as well. And I know the parents have brought this to your attention as a concern. So why don't we go ahead through the ages, because you are an expert in transitions and resources and what that child needs and when they need it and how to help that child, that family and child through it. So in order to help our listeners in the best way possible, what do you think about going through some ages and they get a better idea of what that looks like for them?
Yeah, I think that would be great. I would definitely love to do that, because at different phases of life, there are different things that you can do to prepare for transition. And I think, like what you said, Holly, and research backs it up too. Most families who have differently abled children are thinking not past 3 weeks into the future. And so thinking about adulthood when someone is the age of 7 is really difficult to do. And so I definitely love to be able to kind of provide listeners with a little bit of a roadmap of some simple things of what it could look like, of what to focus on when, so that they feel like they have some type of raft out there on the ocean with them.
I love it. I love that you give the raft.
Now we'll be your raft. We are going to come alongside of you. We're going to pull you up into the boat with us, and we're going to help steer you, because we're not meant to do this alone. And I think so many families that we work with feel very isolated, and there's so many questions, right? And no one's giving them the answers. No one's laying all the cards on the table, so to speak. And so I feel like that's definitely my job, is laying all the cards out on the table, working with families individually in a way that uniquely builds them their best plan for their future. So I'm ready.
All right, perfect. Let's first look at the little ones, like ages 0 to 4, kind of before kindergarten. So what would you say? Again, we don't want to overwhelm, but if you happen to have a child, a student, a client in that age group, this would be maybe some things to consider.
So I would say, first and foremost, making sure that your child has access to early childhood services. whatever that might look like, whether that's occupational therapy, physical therapy, they're going to a really great place for education. That's going to be primary, making sure that their needs are met and that you have a great agency that you're working for and you're working with and alongside of. We also tell families this is a great time to call up a really wonderful attorney and to discuss estate planning and a special needs trust, because the earlier we can start thinking about it and talking about a trust for lifelong support, the better. As well as working with a special needs financial planner. And people say, well, they're only 0 to 4, but the earlier we can do these things, the better. This is also the time we tell families about Medicaid waivers. So state by state, there, especially if the child has already been diagnosed with, in North Carolina, intellectual disability or developmental disability, IDD, you can be eligible to put your name on what's called the innovations waiver in North Carolina. And right now the waiting list is 12 years to get these funds for these various services. And so the earlier we can start thinking about finances, long-term accessing these services, the better. And then we also say, just for transition purposes, giving them voice and choice during these times are really important. Self-determination is one of the biggest indicators of success as an adult. And so for our 0 to 4s in small ways, it can be, what color shoes do you want to wear to school today? Right? What color pencil would you like to play with? Letting them see that, hey, I can make choices and I can make decisions is really huge developmentally during this time.
I love that. And so I'm glad that you brought up the trust and looking into the innovations waiver. And again, that we're specifically talking about North Carolina.
Yeah.
I know we're still on the wait list for
Mhm.
that waiver. Hopefully it won't
Yeah.
be too much longer. But again, the earlier that you start, the better. And I'm glad that you brought up choice, because when you can advocate for yourself, that's something that changes everything. And we know that. A lot of adults on the spectrum, or differently wired adults that I talk to, will tell me they just felt like they didn't have any choices. Like everybody was telling them what to do all the time.
Mhm.
And they really weren't having a voice in that. And so, of
Yeah.
course, that's incredibly important to start that as soon as possible in any way that's possible for them. So
Absolutely.
let's move on to elementary school age for those who are listening who have children around that age.
Yes, this is such a fun age. So we want to make sure, if you haven't dealt with the financial aspects, the legal aspects at this age, and your child is 5 to 10 or 12, definitely, again, start in reverse. So if your child is older and you haven't talked to a special needs attorney or a financial planner or done the Medicaid waiver, wherever your state might be, I would say those are really important to do. The earlier, the better. In terms of educational aspects, really pushing to make sure that your child not only is getting a high quality education, that their IEP is meeting various standards, but we also say to make sure that you've got lifelong skills built into the IEP. So making sure that functional skills and social skills that they're working on are going to benefit their self-advocacy skills, their ability to have that self-determined, this is what I would like for my life moving forward, as well as just functional life skills in terms of understanding money, right? Money math, being able to read, um, and making sure that whoever you work with, the educator, listens to the family and to the child. It depends on the child too, but the earlier that a child is able to attend an IEP meeting and have a little bit of a say, even if they come in for a 15-minute segment, giving them some ownership over their life is drastically life-changing. Most individuals don't get invited to their first IEP meeting until they're 14, and some are kind of invited by way of the law when they turn 14 to 16, but they don't actually attend. But that's only if it would be appropriate, really, for the individual to be there, because we want to ask them, what goals would you like to meet, right? Tell us about your present levels of academic and functional performance, and really giving them a little bit of more ownership over their life, because families meet, teachers meet, therapists, specialists, we all meet and talk about this individual, and they're never in the room. And the earlier we can get them into the room, even if it's for a 5-minute, 10-minute segment, is really, really huge. At home, again, continuing to work on voice or choice. Finding them also or having conversations regarding careers, regarding post-secondary life at this time is really huge. I think about what are we doing for other students and for other children at this age? We're talking about, who do you want to be when you grow up? What are you interested in? And a lot of times we find that families don't have these conversations with differently wired kiddos, and they're not talking about, hey, what would you like to be? But having them be aware. So we say what's called career awareness, post-secondary life awareness, talking about jobs. And then also, this is a really great time to start discussing their strengths and their abilities, because for a lot of their life, they're told a lot of their weaknesses and kind of areas where they fall short in. And so starting to really hone in on, this is a strength and a skill for you, is going to be huge. And then getting them to say and advocate and teaching them how to express, I'm really great at blank. I have this skill in XYZ. And then just discussing their dreams and asking them what they would like to do, and giving them an awareness of life beyond just the educational aspect. And so even though they are young, being able to have those conversations is going to be really, really important. We also say that it is really helpful during this time period to make sure that the parent is also caring for themselves. And so as a parent of a differently wired kiddo, you have so much on your shoulders. And a large part of what we want to do while we work with families is to make sure that the parents are being cared for. So if you want to work with a really trusted counselor or therapist as you prepare for the middle school transition, the high school transition, the post-secondary transition, we think it's really helpful and beneficial for mom and dad to have someone walk through them throughout their child's life, or just through those major transition moments, to be able to support them with any emotional need they might have, fears that they have. Because as you start to think about the future, it can be really scary for the parents. I like to tag that in there, because I want to make sure that parents are caring for themselves well, so they can care for their children.
I like that you brought that up. And everything that you've been bringing up too, we carry through these ages,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, having that child be as connected to these meetings as we can,
Mm-hmm.
and asking them, even if they don't want to attend, that's okay. It's like, what do you think
Yeah.
about this? What, on a scale to 1 to 10, how important is this to you? I mean, there's so many things and different creative ways that we can make that about them, because it is about them, right? We need them to be at
Yes.
the center of all of it, and make sure that we remember that, because sometimes I feel like the child gets lost in the shuffle, and I don't think that's the intention of anyone or
Absolutely.
any professional. But when you have meeting after meeting, sometimes we just need a good reminder of
Absolutely.
that. So you mentioned again that self advocacy, that choice, that voice. I think that's so great. You also mentioned, which I think is really important, is we think of self care and sort of laugh. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if the
Yeah.
parents are listening right now and laughing along with me, because it's like, how do we do that? What does that look like? And sometimes it can be that small thing,
Yeah.
where maybe it's not a massage, but you sat outside for 5 minutes and had your coffee, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be this massive vacation, or a girl's weekend, or maybe something that doesn't feel attainable right now. It's
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
things that you can also just kind of schedule in here and there,
Hmm.
that I want everyone to hear. And when you also brought up therapy, obviously I'm a psychologist, so I think therapy is incredibly important. But as a mom of two differently wired kids, and again, it's not just about them. I'm not going to therapy
Yes.
weekly because of them, but that is something that is really helpful for me, to talk to someone who's not a friend and not a family member. And I go every single week and I make it happen. It is an absolute priority for
Absolutely.
my mental health, and certainly I think mental health, of course, is incredibly important. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So
Yeah.
let's talk real quick about middle school.
Middle school, what a time to be alive. I will say
I would
this.
do it again for $1 million. I'm just saying.
Oh man. There's so much happening during this time, right? Hormones are starting. There can be behavioral changes. And so one thing that's important to note for families during this time that we say is a lot of parents see behavioral changes around this time. And working with a great psychologist, a great psychiatrist, making sure that the teacher is really communicating what's happening in the school system too, is going to be really important. Having a great relationship with the special educator, the teachers that are in your child's life are important. Um, and I would say this is also something that you can do in elementary school too. But as your school system allows it, and based on your child's needs and what's best for them, getting them also involved in some type of inclusive environment in the school system is going to be really important. And that can happen also in elementary school, also in middle school, whether they're going out for a specific elective class, a reading class. If there is, just various classes, they have a skill or a strength in that they can be involved with their same aged peers. That is huge. And research shows that even if in elementary school they're going out at recess, just for recess with their same aged peers, or they're going to PE, similarly in middle school, they're going to have higher levels of social skills, social skill outcomes, as well as the ability to self-advocate for themselves, learning to do that. Communication improves. So I think advocating for that in the middle school section is also going to be important. In this area, 10 to 14 years of age, I would say, is really where we want parents and the student or the child to be really aware of transition. And so there's different areas, right? There's various life skills, there's family involvement, there's things that are happening in the school section. And particularly, this is going to be the time when the transition IEP starts. So legally, based on IDEA, you're going to start, some states move it back to 16, some states to 14, but most states are at 14 years of age is when the transition IEP begins. So one of the things we tell families is you should ask your special education teacher what transition assessments your child is going to be given to determine and to start their transition IEP. So transition assessments are assessments that will work to assess and see an individual's strengths and needs in various areas, such as communication skills, vocational skills, functional skills, living skills, career awareness skills. And you need to advocate and make sure that your child, A, is being given an assessment that is accessible to them, right? That where they can actually interact with the material. You also need to make sure and ask from the school perspective that they're being given a variety of assessments and not just one time, right? We're not just giving an assessment once and then we're done. But as they grow from 14 to 21, they need to be continually assessed. But we want to make sure that the transition planning is starting here and that you as the parent are asking the questions, because sometimes the transition assessments aren't quality. They're not given in a way that the child is able to even really interact with the material. So that's something that's important that we say to families that people might not think about. And then also making sure that as the transition IEP starts, that the individuals are listening to your child. So like you said earlier, Holly, even if they're not in the meeting and they don't want to attend the meeting, they should be asked, all right, so after high school, what are you thinking about? What are some of the things that you would hope for in terms of your work? If you want to go to a post-secondary education school, for where you would like to live. We also say this is a really great time for workspace learning to begin. So workspace learning is just like self-determination, an indicator of higher success for post-school outcomes. And workspace learning essentially is when an individual is able to go somewhere into the community, whether it's at a bank or at Target or at a grocery store or even at a local attorney's office or at a psychiatrist's office, wherever this might be, they're working out in the community. And so many middle schools will start this workspace learning opportunity. And if your district or your educator, they don't have the funding or they also don't have the means to get your child out into the community, we say if you have a great family network, if you have people in your network in the summer, taking your child for a day to watch aunt or uncle work at a bank, or watching a cousin work at a grocery store and asking if they can get involved is going to be really important. So a lot of times we end up helping clients whose schools do not have workspace learning opportunities for them find a little summer internship, go for 3 days with the support of someone from our team, because it's so important for them to get access, and to see what their life could look like out of school, and to see really what a job looks like, what skills are involved. And then as a parent, to be able to think through, all right, what are the opportunities that I can give my child so that they can make their own choices and decisions, and for us to see really where their abilities and skills lie and where their needs lie. This is definitely also a time to start to think about and to talk about that career interest in terms of at home and in the community. Um, and then we also say this is a really important time to ensure that your child is attending the IEP meeting, because when their transition IEP meeting starts, they should be given an invitation to the meeting. So make sure that invitation comes to the IEP meeting and that you are having those conversations around that. So I would say those are kind of the most important things to do around middle school.
Okay, Kenzie, let's move on to all the ages are important, right? All of them are.
Absolutely.
But I think when it comes to between 15 and 18, we start to realize that's where we are right now with our son, starting to realize like, whoa, okay, high school is going to be over.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? So what would you say about that age range?
I would say the age range is incredibly important, as all of them are, right? There are critical steps. I think the 15 to 18 and 18 to 21 are very pivotal years. In terms of 15 to 18-year-olds, I would say there's so many things that are essential. One of them being exposure to jobs. In terms of job placement in the future, if there's going to be workspace learning happening in the school system, how do you know what your strengths and interests are if you're not exposed to them? So
Mm-hmm.
we say this is a critical time to have exposure to about 3 to 5 different jobs. And typically, if the school system can help facilitate this, or if you as a parent can facilitate this with family members, friends, even going and visiting dad at work, right? And seeing what he's doing, or a cousin if they work at a local car wash, or if someone works at a retail store that you know, giving them exposure and helping them to see it is going to be incredibly important. I would also say this is an essential time to identify strengths and interests that go into conjunction with actual jobs. So identifying things that they're great at home. For example, if they're really good with problem solving and they enjoy Legos and thinking through how things are built, if they really enjoy making a schedule, following a schedule, whatever that might be, whatever their strengths and skills are in conjunction with a job, talk about it. If they're really great at communication, giving directions, greeting people, great with math, money management, could be great at a cashier role. Start to identify and call out to your child. I really see that you have a lot of skills with communicating to people and making people feel welcome. How do you think you could use that in a job? And even if it's like a put in task, could they be great at potentially fulfillment in a warehouse industry, right? During this time for the school system, it's really and crucially important to ensure that transition assessments are happening continually from the school system. So they're informing the transition IEP, at least they should be, right, for best practice based on transition assessments. And there should be multiple transition assessments happening every year so that you're consistently getting an update for how their skill development is building in terms of vocational skills, communication, social, right? Life skills. So ensuring and asking the questions to the educators, let me see can I see the transition assessments? What transition assessments are you giving? And also ensuring that they are involved in that IEP process to the ability that is best for that individual teenager. So if that means that the teacher could sit down with them and say, hey, I really feel like I want to work on money math with you. Here are 2 goals. Which goal would you like to work on? And giving them a little bit of autonomy, even in their IEP process, could be huge. Having them come and present their present levels in a PowerPoint presentation to the team, discussing their strengths in front of a group of people that is talking about their lives, I think is really important and vital. And we see that research shows that as individuals are more involved in their IEP meeting, as they're able to be, there's just going to be better outcomes, and they're going to be developing, right, that self-determination and autonomy and self-advocacy skills that are going to be essential when they have a job in the workplace. And I think that we spend so much time talking about an adult or an individual, a teenager in a room without them. And if it's their life, they need to be involved to the extent that it is appropriate. We always want to give dignity. I'm in the dignity business. So I'm going to make sure that everyone is given dignity and respect. And so if it's best for them not to be present to hear about potential weaknesses or needs, if that's not if that's negatively reinforcing for them, having them come in maybe for 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, an hour, whatever is appropriate for them will be important. Even if they're using a switch to communicate, if they like that goal or if they don't, would be, I think, huge in giving them voice and choice as appropriate as older people. In the home, there's so much that parents can do. Helping the adult or teenager at this point, they're 15 to 18, be responsible for things. So you can do this at the age of 6, right? We talked about letting someone choose what they're going to wear, choosing the snack, but really making sure that they are responsible between 3 to 6 things at home every day. Whether that's they pick out their clothes, they're making a basic meal, they're making a sandwich, depending on fine motor skills and what they're able to do, putting popcorn into the microwave as it's appropriate, right? Getting a snack out. If they're able to do certain things at home, making their bed, cleaning their room, going and getting the mail, taking the trash out, giving them responsibility and handing things over, the earlier, the better, so that they're starting to develop these skills. And I think it can be really difficult as parents, especially if things are going to take longer, or if there might be more challenges, just to say it's easier if I do it. And that, while that could be true, it's going to hinder their growth and especially their independence. And 15 to 18 really is a time where we need to see, what skills do you have? What are you able to actually do in the home setting? And especially if transition assessments are given, teachers and educators should be asking parents what's happening in the home. And if you're not giving your child the ability to take things over and to be a little bit more independent, how are you going to be able to answer those questions? And sometimes it might be a lot of, well, I don't know if they can actually make a meal. I don't know if they know how to use the oven safely because I've never given them the opportunity. I'm not sure if they could wake themselves up in the morning or if they can set their own alarm. So helping them take over responsibility, and obviously doing that in a scaffolded manner. So you're not dumping 5 things on them at once, but one thing, letting them grow, practice, gain more independence. All right, now you're going to be helping me make a meal plan with a parent, right? What are we going to buy at the grocery store? Helping dad learn how to change a light bulb is something that parents don't think about. But if your child can live independently and their light bulb goes out, they don't know how to change it safely, these are things they can learn so early. Even helping them to be capable within medication management. I think this is a huge time. If your child doesn't know what their medications are for, and they're able to have a conversation, and they should know what their medications are for, having the conversations with their pediatrician, with their psychiatrists, whoever is involved, and getting them to know, this is the medication you take for X. And if it's not appropriate for them to know, that's absolutely okay. But if it is, helping them to understand, and then giving them a little bit more autonomy over how and when they're taking their medications, as based by a doctor's guidelines. But if they set an alarm on their phone, oh mom, my alarm went off, I'm going to go get my medicine, I'm going to give it to you, can you give me a pill, give me 2, whatever that looks like. Even if it's they're getting the bottle and giving it to you, or they're setting an alarm and reminding the parent, I need to get my medication today. Because that's something that they are going to need to be able to take over, especially if they are going to be living independently or in a group setting, whatever that's going to look like. I think they should know. And it is important that they can start to gain those skills slowly. I would say in terms of self-determination, some school systems and school settings will let individuals choose classes in high school. Every other high schooler is choosing the classes they're taking, right? They're choosing what electives they would like, what math, what reading. If your child can choose one class to take, if they can go out to art or PE, or if they can if there's, an elective time where that's, a science lab or something really interactive and fun, if you can give them a choice over something, if it's possible, I think that is absolutely huge. This is also a time when you should start talking about post-secondary options. talk to your child and the school system about, all right, what are we going to do after they graduate? Do we want to go to a tech college? Do we want to go to an inclusive program in North Carolina, like the Scholars with Diverse Abilities at Appalachian State, or the University Participant Program at Western Carolina? There's a program at UNC Greensboro. UNC Chapel Hill just started their program, Heels Up, with their first inaugural class, which is huge. So having the conversation and actually scheduling a college tour, just like any other, approaching 16 or 17-year-old would do, going and making that that step is going to be huge so that they can start to see their future a little bit more tangibly. So those are certain things. I would say also when they turn 18, making sure that you're applying for Medicaid and SSI if they qualify is going to be a huge step as well, while you're preparing to move also into adult services.
So you hit on, oh my goodness, Kenzie, so many important things.
And there's so many more, Holly. I could talk to you for so long. Yeah.
All right. So would you come back on and talk to me again at another time?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love it. So you talked about so many important things, and there are wonderful things to start doing, and it's a process, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's easier sometimes to do it yourself as an educator or clinician or a parent. But that doesn't necessarily serve them. So even thinking about what could happen during the day, I think is helpful. There are some things that, I do with my son where we sit down together with his medication box for the week and he does it with me.
Yeah.
So I started doing it with him sitting next to me, going through all of them, what they look like, putting them in, and then gradually moving that over to his job that I'm monitoring. I also have him call in his refills with me next to him. So there's just so many things. He did make a great grilled cheese sandwich, which he's so good at. But he does forget to turn the stove off and put the food away. So that's just the next step of what we're going to do with him making that sandwich that he likes. So just thinking about that, and like you said, choice, making sure that child, teen, adolescent, almost adult, is making as many decisions as they feel comfortable,
Absolutely,
and with guidance when needed. And that's just incredibly important. So you have such a wonderful service that you provide. So tell us a little more about that.
So at Able Transition Consulting, I started my business because as a special educator, I saw a gap where we were preparing them with their transition IEPs, but then they were leaving and there was no direction and not really true lifelong guidance from a transition specialist. And so I did pursue my master's degree in transition to answer that question of like, what's next? And so at Able Transition Consulting, we work with individuals of all ages. I would say the majority of our clients are 16 to 30 years of age, and we would access what's called the full transition package if you're over the age of 16, where we build out a lifelong plan visually and then a written extensive plan. And we build out goals for 20 years into the future and for every area of adulthood in a written plan that the individual and their family gets. We're going to touch on every single area of adulthood, from living to home, to a successful home life, employment, post-secondary education, finishing in the school system, transportation, mental health, healthcare, you name it. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to help you see what the timeline should look like, who should be involved, what you should be doing, how you should be supporting this individual and growing in these certain skills, and the resources that are available to you. So our goal is to really provide a holistic transition plan that leads the individual 20 to 30 years into their future.
Oh, that's so wonderful, because I do think, again, as a parent, it can be really overwhelming. And again, and some of us, and definitely me sometimes, living in those 5-minute increments where, oh my goodness, my kid's going to be 17 this year. And what does that look like? He's got, 3 more years of high school, but what does that look like after? And not being in that moment where he's almost 18, what does that look like? How do I help him make decisions? Like you said, SSI, post-secondary, vocation. I mean, there's just so many things to consider, living situations. And it can be incredibly overwhelming. And I love that you are filling that gap. It's absolutely necessary. I'm so thankful for that. And I know that we're going to be utilizing your services for our family very soon. So tell us your website so our watchers and listeners can find out more.
Yeah, so it's abletransitionconsulting.com. You can find us on social media, at Able Transition, and we'd love to speak with you. We have an easy way to get started with us is a 45-minute free strategy call where we see who are you, how can we help you, where are your areas of need, who is your child, what are you hoping for the future. And I'm also very transparent in those calls. I want to make sure that we are the ideal people to support you. And if we're not, I'm going to make sure that I can point you in the right direction for what you need. But if you're wanting a lifelong plan and you need help with the nebulous of the thoughts and the fears of the future, kind of condensing that and then having a specialist who is able to see, what the lifelong plan should look like, coming along and support your family collaboratively. We're your people. Our main goal is that the individual and the adult is at the center of the plan, that they're the loudest voice in the room because it is their life. And I want them to live a life that they love, a life that is high quality. And I want parents to feel peace that their child is going to live a great life, that there's a plan in place so that they can tell all the movers and shakers in their life, this is what we're moving towards. And so that when they're no longer here or thinking about when they're no longer here, the fear doesn't arise, but the peace and the hope and excitement can arise instead.
Oh, so good. Okay. Thank you so much for today and your time. I can't wait to have you back on. And I am thrilled that you provide this very, very needed service. I know a lot of people are going to be reaching out to you. So again, thanks so much, Kenzie, and I'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much, Holly. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like this episode, please share it with someone. It may just be what they need to watch today. If you're a parent, I'd love if you came on over and joined our Facebook group, Autism ADHD Group for Parents. If you're a therapist or educator, come on over to our group, Autism ADHD Group for Therapists and Educators. You're going to find those links right down there in the notes. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.